right. Hoping that's going to pop up here soon. Gonna mute that. Okay. So this is Max with the Verb House. We just started our first ever game jam, and I'm going to start our game project here from the very start, straight from the terminal. I'm going to be using my own engine, which I call Ladybug. You may hear me reference that throughout the project. It is based on Monogame, and I'm going to be doing pretty much all of the code stuff through or all the game logic through code. There's not a GUI or anything like that, so you'll actually see me talk about almost everything. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and create the folders and get them hooked up to a GitHub repository I've already created. So that's the first thing here you'll see me do. Just making sure I haven't already created something. Okay, I am good, so I'm going to just make a little folder. I'm going to call it Birbjam 1 because we don't have a name for this game quite yet. I'm going to go into that folder here, and the first thing here I'm going to do is I'm going to make a little readme. So, and I'm going to open this up in Visual Studio Code, and that's where we'll stay pretty much for the rest of this. Get this over here onto the right screen. Alright, so we've got the README here. I'm going to go ahead and just add some information here. So the themes we're going to be following are birds, rebel, that's rebel the verb, not rebel the noun, and breakfast. And our first idea candidate is a hack and slashers, where you play as a monster. Other monsters have stolen. Birds, yeah, birds. And you are okay, so that is the idea here. Next, I'm going to write down the goals for just this session, coding session here. So I want a main game loop and a draw loop. I want to be able to launch, play, pause, and exit the game. Just two quick goals there. Doesn't sound like a whole lot, but quite a bit will go into this, as you'll see here. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and part of the reason I threw this file together is so that I could have something to give to Git here. So make sure, okay, I don't have a Git here, so I'm going to go ahead and create one. I'm going to go ahead and, before I do anything else, make a git ignore. And in there, I'm going to want to ignore VS files. I don't know if I'll ever use this in Visual Studio, but I'm going to go ahead and keep that up there. A VS Code, which is what I'm using right now. I don't want any object directories. I don't want any bin directories. And I don't want, eventually, when I create a publish directory, I don't want anything out of that. So that looks good for now. Yeah, that looks good for now. So make sure Git sees these files. It does. I'll add those files in. I always like to double check to make sure everything looks together. You'll see me type in git status a lot just to make sure everything is kosher. I'm a checker. Okay, that looks good to me, so I'm going to make this my first commit. Okay, I already did that. Alright, actually I need to set up the remote. This is where I link my local repository to the page on GitHub. And sorry, I'm going to go over on my other screen here and make sure that I have the right GitHub location. I'd hate to attach it to the wrong repository. Okay, so it's going to be git under Birbjam1. All right, so now I'm going to, let's see. Okay, git push set upstream origin master, and that is the command here that will connect my local master to my origin master. All right, that looks good. So if I were to go over to my GitHub here, actually I'll pull it over here so you can see it real quick. You will be able to see those two files I just created and the README that I just typed in over here. That is obnoxiously large, but that is perfectly fine. I can always fix that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started on the actual project here, get into some exciting stuff. Get this out of my way. Oh, thanks for joining, Fo. I didn't even see you jump in. I'm new to this whole thing. Okay, let me go ahead and actually start creating some directories here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create two project directories, one called core, which is going to hold all the central game logic, pretty much almost everything, and another one called X platform, which is going to have the information on how to actually build the project for pretty much every platform using OpenGL. So that's going to allow me to create builds for Mac, Linux, and Windows, all from the same little thing. So that'll make things a little bit easier here. So let me go ahead and create those. I'm going to make sure that I have the right commands set up here. I'm going to actually check that in my terminal here because I have more space. Sometimes my templates like to uninstall themselves, so I'm just checking that they're here. Oh, and look at that, they did. Okay, so I'm glad I checked that. Let me go ahead and install those again. So that is going to be install. I think that's all I need to do. Actually, maybe this. Did that work? I think it might actually be. Oh, it's because I'm getting things mixed up here. It's a .net new I. Okay. Monogame .templates.c#. Fingers crossed. It's taking a second. That's a good sign. Okay, that's a good thing. Now we should see a bunch of monogame. Okay, see all these monogames. That's what I wanted to see here. So that is a good sign. Okay, now we can do what I wanted to do like 5 minutes ago. So I'm going to go back here. This is another terminal I have here built into VS Code, and I'm going to use that .NET new commands to create these directories I was talking about before. So .NET new, actually, sorry, they changed the command I'm looking for, so I want to be sure I have it right. And again, I'm doing it here just so I have more space. I'm looking for a shared, it's called ng shared now. It used to be called ng shared proj, so I want to be sure that I'm using the right thing. And I want that to be called core. Yeah, I'll call it core. That sounds good to me. That is going to create this little core folder right here, and it's going to populate it with some nice little files here that I don't have to write myself, including this little proj items, which is going to tell the build project which files to look for in this project. So if I had some files in here that I didn't necessarily want to go into the build, I would exclude them, but I never do that. So that's good. In fact, actually what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make this a wildcard so it pulls in every CS file in the project. Probably a hacky, dirty thing to do, but it's what I always do. So I believe I do that by going I'm actually going to cheat, and I'm going to check one of my other projects to make sure I'm doing that correctly, because I would hate that to confuse me later. I always doubt myself on the combinations of stars and slashes I need to use to get that wildcard to work correctly. I'm always one off. So I'm going to go into good old Beacon, my main project here. And I'm going to copy the one from that just to be absolutely sure that I am doing this correctly, because I know that that project works. I'm working over here on the other screen, just bear with me real quick. So I'm in the project items right now. And I did that correctly. Sorry to waste your time. Okay, so that looks good. I don't actually need to do anything here. Let's see. I just want to be sure that I don't need to make any adjustments here. Yes. Blank app.proj items. It's actually called core.proj items. It's this file right here, where I do not know why I did that. That all looks good. I don't have to worry about anything else in there. That should all be good. I don't have to worry about anything else in there. Okay, I'm going to create another folder here that I mentioned before, and that's going to be the X platform folder, which is going to contain very little as well. And that is actually, because I'm really good about doubting myself, I'm going to double check it here. Okay, that is still called ng desktop gl, so and we call that X platform. There's nothing magic about that name, that's just the one I like. I could call that anything I like. I could also create 3 different ones, one for Mac, Linux, and Windows, but I just like to have it all in one, make it easy on me that way. Again, that command created this little X platform folder, which has pre-filled with a bunch of useful things. I'm going to get rid of a couple of them. Namely, I don't need this game1.cs. I'm going to put my own thing in that. And then I'm actually going to get rid of the one here as well. I don't need that. Yeah, I know that's a problem. I'll fix it later. I'm going to automatically format this because using spaces to indent is cancer. Change my mind. All right, a bunch of problems with that. We'll get to fixing that. And sorry, I'm just over here admiring my 5 viewers. Thanks, everyone. And sorry, I'm just going to go through this real quick and make sure everything's kosher. I'm going to have to change some things in here. You have to bear with me for a minute because they did just update these templates, and there's some new things in this that I'm still getting used to. But I don't think I have to worry about it too much. But the things I do have to add, so basically this is controlling everything that gets pulled into this little project here. This folder, this X platform, has no clue that this core folder exists, and that's a problem because this is where all of my game logic is going to be. So what I need to do is I need to show this project that this proj items file exists, which in turn shares every file that needs to go into the project. So basically what is going to happen is I need to teach this file to find this file and pull everything that this file is talking about. So I'm going to do that next, and I'm also going to cheat and go over to Beacon just to make sure I am doing it correctly, which means you get to look at nothing for a few more seconds here while I get this figured out. Okay. Normally when working with a C# project, you use something like Visual Studio, the OG, the big one, for Windows, which handles these files for you. I like to cause myself pain and manage these files manually because I work on Linux, which does not have access to big old Visual Studio, so I use VS Code. So I have learned to manage all these files manually. Okay, so this right here is how this file knows about this one, and I'm just telling it to import everything this proj items file talks about. So that's going to take care of that. Yeah, we'll get to that. And then thinking back, I actually did lie a bit ago. I know it's terrible. And I'm going to, as soon as that figures out what it's doing, we're actually going to have 3 folders here at the beginning. I'm going to create a lib folder in which I'm going to actually put my Ladybug engine DLLs. So, is that right? Did I go in the right spot? Okay. I'm going to do a little bit of command line magic here to build Ladybug and put it over into my project. I'm not going to show you Ladybug because that's a whole other rat nest, and it is on GitHub if you're really all that curious. So, okay, so I'm going to go into the build folder. I have an X platform folder in there. That looks right. So I'm going to build it and copy it over into here. So you'll see me do that here real quick. Okay, yeah. No, I almost copied it to Beacon. This is Birbjam 1 live. So if all goes well here, that'll build. And we'll see a couple files here in the lib. That looks wonderful. Okay, so this is Ladybug. That's all it is this little DLL file. This PDB is debug information, so if something goes wrong in this, and it's coming from a Ladybug function, it'll actually show me that Ladybug function, so I don't have to troubleshoot 2 projects simultaneously. It's really cool. And the deps.json, pardon me, just talks about other dependencies. I don't know a whole lot about this file. You can tell by my hesitance, so I'm going to go ahead and close that because I don't know enough about it to say anything else. Okay, so just for completion, I'm going to go ahead and create another folder I like to have here called ref. And what this is whenever I create files, for instance, sprites, I'll keep the Asprite format files in here that can't be used by the game. The game has to use PNG files. So I'll keep those files in here so that they can be kept with the project. And then when I export those files to PNG, I'll put them here in the core folder in the content area. So that's just files that can't be consumed by the project that are still needed for the project. That's what Izzy's working on here, and Kai, so I don't have to worry about those this time around. Okay, so that is it for the general structure. I'm going to do something useless here. I'm going to make an empty text file. And the reason I'm doing that is just so that this folder goes over to Git. There's absolutely no reason I have to do that other than I want to see that folder in Git. Okay, so I'm trying to make a decision here if I want to commit while this doesn't work. I usually don't like committing things that don't build. Yeah, I'll wait until something actually happens here. So now that oh, nope, I just caught myself. So just like this folder didn't know anything about the core folder before I put this little line in, it doesn't know anything about Ladybug or these DLLs that I just put in here. Dropping them into this folder didn't do anything magic to make it see those, so I have to put those in as well. So I do that in this little area. Hopefully you're getting a sense of why I have to reference my other projects so often, because there's a different area to do everything. I have to do this. Okay, that looks good. I really appreciate you watching, Fo. I'm sorry I'm not getting to you faster. I'm not watching that screen. You are right, VS Code runs a lot faster. I love Visual Studio. In fact, I had an issue not that long ago where I had to move a project over to Windows so I could put it into Visual Studio so I could use its world-class debugger to figure out what the hell was going on. And I figured it out. I had been troubleshooting it in Visual Studio Code on Linux for the greater part of an afternoon, and then 20 minutes in Visual Studio I took a snapshot of the memory stack and was able to figure out what was going on. It's amazing. Okay, so for like the third time I'm going to go over here and get this working. Okay, So this doesn't know anything about the game1 class because I deleted that file, so we're going to replace it with something it does know about, which is going to be, and this is the first place you're going to see me use some Ladybug. So, ladybug.scene management, which is probably the coolest module I've made there. Okay, so now that we have Ladybug scene management, also I hate that they don't put any brackets here. Get rid of that. Get that shit out of there. Instead of a game1, we're going to make a new scene manager. And it's not a game, so we'll call it a scene manager. Okay, cool. And now what we're going to do is we are going to normally we would just call scene manager.run, but that's not going to do a whole lot because it doesn't have any scenes to run. So we're going to go ahead and create a scene. It's not going to be very exciting. I'm going to close some of this out just to clear up some space here. And this is the first thing we're going to put here in our core folder. I'm going to create a new folder here called scene because we're probably going to have a couple of them. All right, this is another thing I like to do. The way we have our project items set up here, where it's just pulling all CS files, it really doesn't matter how we organize them in this because it'll pull everything. So it doesn't really matter that I'm organizing it the way I do. This is just how I do. This is just how I've come to do it over the time, over the last few projects I've done. So I'm going to call this, let's go ahead and just call this the main scene. Eventually we'll put all the main game logic in here. I'm also going to want a title scene, and then I usually make the pause menu a separate scene. But we'll just get the main scene running here. So I'll throw a system in there just in case I need it. I'll throw a Microsoft XNA framework. This is the base of MonoGame. So MonoGame is built, it's what Ladybug uses for all the low-level stuff. You can't use Ladybug without MonoGame. You can use MonoGame without Ladybug, but for me, it's a lot slower. Okay, so I think that's the only one there. So using ladybug.scene management. And I'll go ahead with class main scene. I'm going to inherit from scene. I'm going to stop here and restart Omnisharp because it is not checking my file right now. It never does that with new files. I have to save and restart it first. And I'll know it's done when it throws a fit about main scene here. It'll throw an error and let me know that something's a problem. Ooh, here's another problem. Okay, so there we go. That is a good sign. That means that it is scanning the file and letting me know that, hey, I'm not using Ladybug right, which means it's paying attention. Sorry, I'm going to jump over here and check these auto-generated files real quick just to be sure it didn't do anything stupid. That's probably going to be a problem, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I don't think that MonoGame works with Netcore App 3.0. I might have to bump that back to 2, but that's fine. Okay, we'll find that out when I try to build it. Okay, main scene, it is having trouble because I need to create a constructor that actually matches up with the scene base class. So public class, oops. Jeez. No, I can't type tonight. And this takes a scene manager. We'll call that scene manager. And we'll inherit from base scene manager. Okay, and we will do nothing here. Because we don't need any tricky constructor logic right now, but that still has to exist because of C# inheritance for constructors. Okay, we have 4 main functions in a scene. We have load content. And that is where we're going to load in all our assets. We have initialize, which is where we initialize. We have update, which is where we do all our game logic. And we have a draw, where we draw everything. Okay, I'm going to do, what am I going to do? I'm going to do nothing with this file. We're going to keep this empty. This is a scene that will do nothing but it exists, and that's what we need for now. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the program file. This is the entry point for our program. When we actually run the game, it will look for this main function. It'll find our scene manager, and it will run it, and that scene manager will run the game until it's closed, and that is the story of the scene manager. So now that we have a scene for it to actually run, we're going to load that scene in by calling scene manager.load scene, and we're going to pass in a new main scene. And because of weird dependency chains, we have to pass in that scene manager. I haven't figured that out yet. Okay, so now that loads the scene and it runs, it will run the draw and update loops every frame. You can load multiple scenes. That's part of why the scene manager is so cool. With plain old mono game, you have one game loop. With Ladybug and scene management, you can have as many as you like. Probably not as many as you like, but you can have several before it starts to bog down. And now I'm going to push F5 and pray. I'm pretty sure it's going to fail because of that Netcore App 3.0 thing, but we'll see what happens. I'm impressed it's gotten this far. Look at that. That is actually more exciting than you'd think it would be. So that is our main scene running. That's what it looks like. So that's actually a really good thing. Cool. So I'm wrong about the Netcore app thing. That is good to know. Okay. So now we get to actually do some more exciting things, which I have to think about. I'm going to go back to our little README here. So the main game loop and the draw loop were technically there, but they aren't doing anything. The launch, play, pause, and exit the game, that's where we're going to start getting into some actual content. So I think the first thing I'm going to need to do here is get a font so that I can render some text here. So actually, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to copy this. And we're going to do the title scene next. Oop, I didn't mean to do that. Actually, that's easier. What did I just do? Okay. Okay, I'm going to paste everything in here. I'm going to change this to title scene. Title scene. Okay. Cool, now we have 2 scenes. How many more until we have a full game? Okay. Oh, actually, another thing I'm going to do is, since that did run, I'm going to go ahead and put my initial commit in before I lose everything. Why did that... Oh, it's because I'm still in Ladybug. Let's get back to our actual project here. There we go. All right, push that. Maybe. Okay, scared me there for a second. Okay, that worked. I'm going to go over here and check my Git because I'm a checker. And I do see those files. You can see them over here. We've got all the 4 files there, and we've got my little commit note there, so we are good. Okay, so now we get to go shopping for some fonts. I have a handy little folder of DRM-free pixel fonts that I got from a Humble Bundle way back. And I'm going to use those, at least for now. We might find something cooler later on. And let me get those here real quick. Again, I'm going to be working on my other screen here, so bear with me. I don't want everyone to see all my embarrassing Google Drive files, so I'm going to keep it over here. So that is going to be in Projects, Assets, Pixel Font Pack. Okay, and I'm just going to browse through these to find one that I like. Oh, that one's not going to look good everywhere, but I sure like it right here in this moment, so that's what I'm going to use. It is called Blue Sky 8x8 Monospaced Regular. So I'm going to download that, and we are quickly going to see the one part about monogame that I don't like, and that is the pipeline tool. I get why it exists, but it's the one thing I can't do just in code, so that's a bit unfortunate in my opinion. So first thing I'm going to do here is in this content folder, I am going to create a fonts folder, and I'm going to drag in this fancy little font that I just downloaded. And I'm going to give it a name that is less pain in the butt to type, so I'm just going to call it Blue Sky. And if this were a font I got off Google Fonts or somewhere else, I'd also put a license folder in so that that font's license can be shipped with the game. These fonts do not have a license associated at all, I don't believe. Actually, I guess I better check that, huh? Copyright. I actually do have a URL to a license here that I think I can download, so I'm going to go ahead and do that here just to cover my butt. Oh, and that site is not working, so I'm going to pencil that down to do later. In fact, I'll put a little to-do on here. Okay. Because even though they're totally open, I always like to have that in there just in case. Okay, cool. So let's worry about actually getting this to work. Okay, so that is in there. However, the way the content manager works for monogame is interesting. Basically, what happens is when you build a game, it converts these all of your assets that you let it converts them into a binary format that monogame can read. Which is nice because it makes them smaller and also works as a sort of a step of encryption so that your assets can't just be ripped out of the game. It doesn't work for some things like XML, which is why some of my games are totally moddable and that you can change the way dialogue works and stuff like that because the XML is kept intact, which I'm fine with. I just have to keep that in mind when I design games, that nothing super critical can be in XML, which it shouldn't be anyway. So I'm going to go ahead and open this content manager. Oop. It is this little tiny window here. I do not like this application. I do not like having to use it, but it is worth the price of being able to use my own engine that I understand, and monogame overall is a joy otherwise. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Open. I'm going to go to all my projects. Oh geez, you're going to see how behind I am on all my projects here. I'm going to Birbjam here. I'm going to find the content folder and go all the way over here and open this. Now what I do is, so basically this is pointing to this folder right here. There's a fonts folder in here, but this doesn't see it because it's not that smart. So what I have to do is I have to go to Add Existing Folder. I have to click on Open. No, I don't. I just have to. Oh, no, I do have to click on Open. All right, and now it sees this. However, the content pipeline is not smart and does not know how to build TTF files. So what I have to do here is, instead of telling it to build it, it's just going to copy it into the final product. So that is fine. I'm going to save that. What I have to do instead to get an actual font I can use is now I have to create a new item, which is the sprite font file. And I'm just going to call this, we'll just call this title text. Font. Okay, so that is in there. That is set to build. That is fine. I'm actually going to click this build here real quick just to be sure it doesn't throw me any errors. Okay, good. I usually close this, but I'm going to keep this open, so I'm probably going to need it. So, okay, so I added the sprite font file, but how does it know anything about this? It doesn't. It has no idea that even exists. So what I have to do is I have to go in here This defaults to Arial right here, but what I can do is I can just call this blue sky.ttf. And I think I have to do this to show that it's in the same directory. I don't actually know. Actually, let's find out. Let's find out if I have to do that. That'll be good for me to know. Let's clean it and rebuild it and make sure that it knows how to do that. Apparently that worked, so I'm learning all sorts of things tonight, so that's cool. That's 2 characters I no longer have to type as I work on these. So, okay, so we've got a font. That file has been modified because we added the font. So we should be good to go there. Let me go ahead and decide exactly what I'm doing next. I think the next step is going to be to create the start menu. So that is going to be in our title scene. But I think I'm going to cheat again and see how I structured this in my other project. I'm not copying the code. I'm just seeing exactly how I structured this. It is 12:30 and I am tired, so that is my excuse. Okay. I did have a separate menu folder. And eventually I do want a better menu system. I've already improved the menu system once, but eventually I want a system that I do not have to create a source file for every single menu. That would be really nice. And I think through using events and custom event handlers, I'll be able to figure that out. But today is not the day. So we are going to create a title menu class here. Actually, you know what? This isn't the way I did it in Beacon. Give me just one moment here. Game menu. I'm just seeing how much I want to structure this compared to one of my other projects here. I think I am going to have to borrow some methods of creating a nice, concise, interactive menu. So I'm going to do that. I am going to borrow some menu code from Beacon. So I'm going to create a new folder here, call it class. This is where I just throw general CS files that really don't have any better place to be. And I'm going to just take a couple files over here from Beacon. In fact, I'm going to do it from my local copy so that I don't have to copy and paste from Git. So I'm going to do that from here. Alright, you're going to see into Beacon a little bit, which I suppose I'm okay with. So I am going to pull I'm going to pull you, and you over. I don't think this is cheating because these are things I'm going to add to my engine anyway. And then I actually don't think I need this class now that I'm thinking about it, so I'm going to get rid of title menu. I guess I can do that from here. Okay, so all of these should work. Ladybug has a very basic menu system that allows you to design menus in XML and import them. It's really handy. What it doesn't know how to do, what I didn't put in the base engine, is logic on how to render those to the screen, just because I wanted that to be defined by the consumer and not by the engine. But what I've started doing instead is just copying my implementation to every project, so that's a good sign that I should probably just put it in the engine. So I'll consider this me just using like a super preview version of Ladybug. So That's what I'll roll with. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close beacon. Hopefully I won't need it again. And I think this will work the way I want it to. So I am going to double check how I structured one more thing here, and then we'll actually get doing some exciting things. So let me go ahead and go to title scene here. Title scene, okay. All right, we're gonna make some pretty simple variables here. We'll just call that the game name for now. Oh, we need some more using directives. I don't actually know if we need content, but usually end up needing it. So we are also going to want input. Ladybug does have its own input module, but it does use some things from the model game XNA module, so we're going to pull that in too. We are going to be using a lot of Ladybug modules here, so okay, scene management we've met before. Graphics, I have some pretty nice animation and sprite rendering helpers in there. One that allows really easy ways to create text and render it to the screen and move it around in a much easier way than the base model game XNA way has. Box model is a method I have for distributing and aligning things on screen that makes things really easy. UI includes actual menu code. I'm thinking of actually moving that somewhere else, but that's where it is right now. And then Ladybug is just an improved layer of input handling that has better detection methods than the base XNA does. Okay, so with that all said, we're going to actually be able to create some of these variables we're going to need here. So, sprite fonts, we're going to need the title font. We are going to need a text sprite for the actual title. That's the actual logical entity that is the title that is being rendered on screen. So private sprite of text sprite. And that is something that comes from Ladybug Graphics. Title sprite. And we are going to need a menu. You'll notice I like prefixing my private variables with an underscore. It's an old holdover from C++ for me. Okay, we are going to use, I think we're going to use only mouse input on the menu. I think that's going to make some things easier. So I'm probably going to regret that later, but that's what we're going to roll with for now. So private mouse monitor. Wonder why I didn't see that. We have Ladybug input. Anyway. I cannot spell tonight. You know what? It might just be because I haven't restarted on Sharp since adding all these using directives. I like VS Code, but it has a lot of little idiosyncrasies like that you have to get through. Okay, it sees that that's from Ladybug input now. We are good. I'm going to start ditching some of these tabs just in case we need some more space and I don't want to get lost. I am actually, well, I've got this on the mind. I'm going to change this over to the title scene. So that when I'm done with all this and I hit F5, I don't wonder why it's still a black screen, because that will totally happen. I don't need this. I don't need that. I'll keep the README open in case I need to make any more to-do notes. The main scene's good for now. Okay, this should be everything we need to continue, which is nice. Oh, I think this is actually capitalized M. There we go. Okay, that looks all good and happy. So we can continue setting our variables up here. Okay, we got the menu. We are also going to need, we got the mouse monitor. And I think that's all we're going to need for the time being here. Okay, so we have a sprite font here that we're going to have to actually load. We actually have to, show which sprite that's supposed to be. So we're going to go ahead and set that up over here. So title font, we're going to call content. Load, we're going to load a type of sprite font, because that's what it is. And that is going to be located in fonts. And it is called title font, right? That is what I called it. Oh, no capital F though. Because of the way Content Manager works, I do not need to specify the file extension, so that is perfectly fine right there. And then I think that's the only stuff I want to take here right now. I've got some red over here that's distracting me, so I'm going to move on to checking that out. Okay, it's this little text label thing down here. We don't have labels right now in... This is something I copied over from Beacon, so those are something I had to create for Beacon that I don't need here, so I'm just going to comment those out. So looks like it's going to be a similar issue here. It's because I didn't copy. You know what? I might need text labels. I'm going to just pull those over from Beacon too. I actually think that's going to be a simpler solution that's going to save me some time in the long run, so I'm going to steal more. It's not anything somebody using a real engine doesn't have access to already, so it's not cheating. And we restart Arm to Sharp again, so that it actually picks up that file and tells me everything's good and okay, because I need to hear that right now. Okay, I'm going to double check that if I mouse over a text label somewhere that it's, oh, that is a text label, that it's not going to, okay, text label. I think we're good. Okay, I'm going to call that good. It'll let me know if there's a problem. So, I'm going to get rid of that, don't need that, don't need that, don't need that. Okay, I don't need that. Okay, I think we are good to continue here. So initialize. This is where we're going to initialize the things we have here right now. So mouse monitor. Okay, we are going to, so we'll go ahead and set up the little title sprite too while we're here. So we're going to go ahead and get the size of the screen so that we can center it. It's probably a better way to do that, but that's what I'm going to use for now. So title sprite is, oh, I guess I need to initialize that first, don't I? Oops, it's a text sprite. It is going to use the title text. It is going to use the title font. And we are going to give it a ridiculously large rectangle to start with because it will be able to size itself down later. It doesn't really matter where it is, so I'm going to put it at 0, 0, and we're going to make it 400 by 400. That is way bigger than it needs to be, but that is totally fine. Because what I can do is I can call this little cool function I put in here called set bounds to text. It will automatically contract its bounds to fit the text. The reason why I set it really large first is sometimes if you have a big font and you don't make it big, it'll wrap to the next line, and then when you set the bound to the text, it will take that wrapping into account, so you'll have a really weird sized, it just won't be laid out the way you expect it to. And that actually brings to mind, sorry I'm jumping around so much, that this title font over here is still the default size of 12. I'm probably going to want that to be like 30, probably even larger, but we'll go with 30 for now. Okay, so we're good there right now. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use a set bounds on the title sprite to not actually change its size, but just to change its position. So we're going to go to title sprite dot set bounds, not to text. And this is going to be quite a mouthful of a function, so I'm going to space it out to hopefully make it a little easier to understand, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so title sprite dot bounds dot copy at position. So what this will do is this actually creates a new copy of the rectangle. Rectangles are structs, so they're bounds, or they're passed by value, which means that we can't just simply move them. We have to get a new copy of them. So what this does is this will get a new copy and we'll end up transferring it to that copy that is at a more useful position on the screen. So we're going to put this at a new vector 2, which is a two-dimensional space. We're going to make that screen bounds. And we're going to get the handle position. This is part of that box model. What this will do is we can get the position of any corner of a rectangle or the center with this simple little function that we're going to, so we want the center. Okay, so what we're going to be doing here is we are going to be setting the bounds of the title to a new rectangle that is located at the center of the screen. And we're probably going to offset that a bit. Actually, we're going to do that right here. We're going to off-center it by, let's just try 50, throwing that out there. And then what this is this is the handle of the box we're setting. So basically, I'm going to set this to box handle center. And what that means is the center of the title sprite box will be put at the center of the screen bounds box. If I wanted to match the top left corner of the title sprite box to the top left corner of the screen bounds, I would put box handle top left, box handle top left. If I wanted to match the bottom left corner of the title sprite box to the center of the screen, of the whole screen, I would do the this here would be the center and this here would be the bottom left. So it's which part you're matching up, more or less. So with that nightmare of a function out of the way, we're going to go ahead and close that off with a semicolon, and that should actually do that. So the next thing we get to do here is actually design the menu. I mentioned earlier that we can design that through XML, so that's what we're going to do. So since the XML file is going to be technically an asset, an external file that is not compiled into the project, that means it goes here in the content folder. So I am going to create a new folder here called, we'll just call it menus, keep it plural. And we're going to create a new file called title menu.xml, not CML, XML. Okay. All right. Menu. And then menus are comprised of things called panels. Which contain buttons. Come on. And we'll do exit. Yeah, exit sounds good. Instex. I cannot type tonight. I did forget that there is a label. Okay, so let's see, panel ID equals, I always like to have a root panel in there. Let me get some more details here, just to, again, I'm borrowing from another project setup here just to make sure that I don't run into any pitfalls that I've already solved elsewhere. No reason to do that. So I'm going to go to menus, title menu. Okay, I am going to, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a position attribute here. Center width, I'm just going to pretty much use the same thing as beacon here, because I keep doing that. 512, height equals 256. So this little position center attribute here, this is going to use that exact same box handle methodology I talked about in the previous file. It will use it to match the center of this panel with the center of its parent panel, which in this case happens to be the entire screen. So this is going to appear right in the center of the screen. And actually, I'm going to use something here called a list panel, which is going to help me in spacing out the buttons without me having to manually position them. Spacing is the space between the buttons, margin is the space between the top of the panel so that they're not mashed up against the top there. Also, I'm going to do another position equals center so that this is in the center of this panel, which is in the center of the screen. So everything's going to be nice and tidy there. Width equals 209. I don't know why that number was used, but we're going to roll with it. Okay, I think that's everything I needed. I'm going to check something in the game menu here, which are these default aliases right here. Menu panel, list button. Okay, those are all set up the way I need to. That's a whole story to explain everything that works here. I can go into that later, but basically this links an attribute name, or an element name, sorry, an element name to a class. So I just wanted to be sure that these are set up to match these the way I expected. So a menu is going to be a game menu, a panel, that is not plural. A panel is going to be a drawable panel, a list is going to be a list panel, a button is going to be a menu button, and a label is going to be a text label. That's how this is translated between C# and XML. So, oh, good night, Fo. Thanks for joining me. Is later than I expect, so I don't know if I'm going to get all the way to getting something working here, but I'm going to try my darndest. So, okay, that all looks good. I'm going to try my best to at least get this play quit menu to work, and then tomorrow I will do more. But, okay, so let me see where we left off here. So we've got all that going. We've got the menu XML set up here. So let me dig up some notes on getting that working correctly. Again, I'm referencing an older project just so that I don't fall into any pitfalls that I've already solved elsewhere. I happen to have lost that project. Oh, it's because it's over here. Okay, so let me go back to where I was. Okay, so the next thing I think we got to do here is actually build the menu from XML. Building the menu and then binding its buttons to events, it can take up quite a bit of space. So what I like to do is I usually like to put that in a private function outside of the initialize method, then call it an initialize. That way it looks a little bit cleaner and doesn't take up the bulk of the initialize method. So I'm going to create a new method here called private void build menu. Actually, let's call it rebuild, just because it'll probably be called more than once, and it can be repeatedly used as necessary. So do we have, we do have menu defined up here, so menu. Okay, this takes quite a bit of parameter finagling, so we're going to need IO up here to pull the XML correctly. Okay, so we do path.combine, and we are going to use this is a magic folder here that resembles the folder that the executable is currently running in. Since the XML is kept with the game files and not necessarily with the user data, we use this, and then it's going to be in that underneath the content manager's root directory. And then I just have to double check something else here. Okay, we are actually not done combining this path. It's a long path. So that leads to this content folder here. We need to drill down and get into here. So we're going to do fonts, and then title menu XML. This time we do need to use the XML because it's not using the content manager to parse the file. So, and then it uses the menu font, or the title font, rather. And this also needs a scene manager reference, and it uses that to get some important references to be able to actually draw itself. Okay, so that looks good. So now let's go ahead and get the buttons so that we can start hooking some events to them, which I guess we should create the load and quit game functions, shouldn't we? So let's go ahead and do that next, since we'll be using those after we'll be using those as part of this method. So private, and we will do a load game, and since this is going to be an event handler, we have to give some special parameters, that being object sender and event args e. And we also do a quit. Nope. Why did I type in load? Void quit game. Same thing, object sender. Event args e. Thank you very much. All right, so what we're going to do here, we're probably going to end up coming back to this method later, I'm just thinking. But for right now, what we're going to do is we are going to call the scene manager to load a new main scene using itself. And we are going to unload this scene. And I think that's it for that. I think that is all we need to do in that particular method. Later on, when we're passing state data and save information, we're going to have to figure out some more complex ways to do that. But for right now, that will suffice just fine. And this one's easy. You know what? I actually not sure where that comes from. Quit game, object center, event args e. I'm missing something here. I'm going to look this up real quick. I apologize. That's what it is. That is what it is. So scene manager.exit. Okay. I'm going to blame it on the hour. The hour is getting to me. It is past 1 a.m. Okay, so, all right. I think we're almost done here. So now what we need to do, now that we've got the menu built here, is we need to get the buttons that we have defined in here. We're going to get them by the panels and by the IDs. And then we're going to subscribe to their events with these functions down here, which is how they're going to be hooked up. So just so we can get a quick little shorthand here, panels, we're going to look into the root panel, then we're going to look into the button list. You'll see that I'm digging in here. I'm getting this panel by ID and then this panel by ID. The list is also a type of panel. And then I'm going to get all the controls, which is all the buttons and labels and stuff inside. So this is a collection indexed by string, which is the ID of the control. So I can simply get the like the start button from indexing into this with the value of start, and the exit by indexing that with the value of exit, which I'm going to be doing right here. So button start, this is run dot activate plus equals, that's going to be the load game function, and button exit is going to be the quit game. Oh, that's what I was doing earlier. I'm so tired. I was wondering where that quit game came from. I was defining it in the function itself. I don't know why I didn't see that. Okay, anyway. I think that now... Oh, and we need to call rebuild on the menu, which refreshes it now that we've created it and bound all these features to it. So I think that might be everything we have to put together here, at least to get something to draw. So what should we do next here? Let's get the menu updating and drawing correctly. So we're going to do a little bit of input handling now. So first thing we need to do is get the keyboard monitor actually working and looking for stuff. So we're going to call keyboard monitor. Oh, we don't have a keyboard monitor, we have a mouse monitor. Okay, we're going to begin the update, and we're going to get the mouse state from XNA. Oh, actually, it's mouse.getState. Okay, then we're going to call the end update down here. And now we're going to do all our mouse input handling between these two functions. This is how it can tell that we do the beginning and the end, and this is what helps it understand how the state has changed since the previous frame. Monogame on its own, it can only tell if a button is down or up. It cannot tell if it is the frame in which it was pressed or released on its own. This helps add that functionality. So I can tell, Ladybug can tell when a frame was pressed or released, or a button was pressed or released. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is check for, actually there's some special methods we have with menus that I'm going to take advantage of here. So again, I'm going to just check my notes here to make sure I'm doing this in a way that works. So we're going to call menu, activate control at mouse. So that is nice and easy. So now we are going to also, now we're going to check for the actual mouse click event. So check button, we're going to do mouse button dot left click, and we are going to check if it is, let's do released. I found that that's usually better in cases where you're transitioning scenes as soon as that is happening. Okay, so we were checking that. And we're also going to do a basic little sanity check here to make sure that the mouse is still on the control when it's released. That way, if you click and then move off the control, or rather, if you've moved off the control but you were on it before and you click, it doesn't fire. It doesn't accidentally remember the last control you were on. You have to still be on it in order to click it. So, and when that happens, you're going to activate the item, which is just whatever the current active control on the menu is. Okay, I missed something. I'm thinking that this is just supposed to be over here. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in brackets. I really don't like it all that much when you have a if statement or other control flow statement without brackets. I've seen it cause more trouble than it's worth, even though it takes up more space to do the brackets. So I think we're good with that. So now we're going to do we'll go ahead and fill out the draw loop here. This is going to be really quick and easy. First thing we need to do is come up here into, we can do this in either the initialize or the load content. It technically makes more sense in the initialize loop since you're not loading content, but since the sprite batch depends on content, sometimes I like putting it up in here. I'm going to put it up in here mostly just because it's going to have a lot less going for it. There's going to be a lot less stuff in this particular function, so it'll be easier to find. So okay, we'll call that good there. And I also just realized that we are not even calling our fancy new rebuild menu here. That would have stumped me down the line. Glad we saw that. Okay, we've done a lot since the last time we ran the game. I hope it all works just fine. Okay, so now we're going to actually use that sprite batch that we set up there. And then we're going to use some built-in draw methods that make this a little bit easier. So we're going to do the title sprite draw, and we just pass in the little sprite batch we just created there. And then we're also going to do a menu.draw. These objects have been taught to draw themselves, which is really handy because sometimes these draw functions get really verbose. Okay, do I dare run the game? I'm just looking through my other subject here to see if there's anything obvious that I have missed. I'm just looking in here to see the behavior of these buttons when they are activated and not. Namely, if they work the way they do in Beacon, they're going to turn a green color and get a little double chevron charm when they're active. I don't know if that's what I want for this game. Okay, yep, that's right here. And do we have those colors defined here? I don't actually see the colors defined. That might be in drawable panel. Okay, a button has its own draw function. Let's see, is it in there? Color.white, color enabled. Okay, that's where the color's set. I set it all the way down there. So it is going to have that green color, but whatever. Okay, let's see what happens if I push F5. Fingers crossed. far so good. Oh, there's an exception. Okay. Well, that makes sense because I do not have that font in this project. So let's actually give it a font that we have, which we'll give it our blue sky. And that is the beauty of ripping code from other projects. Someday I'll have this in the engine and I won't have to do that anymore. The content file was not found. What, did I spell it wrong? Blue sky font. Did I do it all right? Content fonts. I'm sure I'm looking right at the problem here. Oh, it's because we're not loading that file. We are loading the title font file. We can't load the TTFN directly, of course. Okay. Build menu, create file path.
You coming to bed soon?
Yeah. Well, why is that looking for it in fonts? Did I type in fonts instead of menu somewhere? Well, yes, I did. That's not supposed to be fonts, is it? Menus, plural. Content, menus. It's because, wait, no. Title menu.xml. Oh, you know what it is? I haven't gone into the content manager and added that folder. And that is why I don't really like this that much, is I always forget that. So now I get to add this. It does not know how to build XML files, so even though this defaults to build, it will error out. So I have to set this to copy. Actually, that's a lie. It can build XML files that have a very specific format, but it's not the one I use. I just learned that yesterday, actually. Okay, that looks good now. Now let's see what happens. Oh, I shouldn't have closed that. Oh well. Okay, skip head line, all reader.read. This happens pretty often when we create new XML files. What is the exception? I wish it would tell me. Name cannot begin with the what is beginning. What did I mistype? Line 2 is this little guy right here. I do not know why I comma separated those. It is a good thing I'm almost done for the night because I think I'm making these mistakes because I'm tired. So, ooh, that looks terrible, but it's something. So if I click this quit, it exits. If I click this play, we should see a plain black screen. We don't, but we'll figure that out. Okay, easy fixes, easy fixes. So what I can do here, I need to open the pipeline tool back up. We're going to create a new font file. I hate that. Okay, we're going to create a new sprite font, and we're going to call it menu text, menu font. Okay, we are going to change it to also use that, but we're going to keep the size 12. And that should hopefully be good. I'm going to try to build and make sure that works. Good, 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 good. Okay, minimize that instead of close it. And now we need to make it use that font instead. So where is everywhere? Actually, I think that's over here in title scene. And we're going to load a new font called menu font. And we're going to load that in here. And then we're going to go down to this and make this menu font. And theoretically, that should be all there is to it. That is a lot better. That's a lot better. This is still massive, but... Oh, and hey, play works now. Okay, I'm going to test that quit works. Alright, cool, that works. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and make a commit here, showing that... Actually, before I do that, I'm going to update the README here. Okay, so we can technically launch and play the game. So I'm going to... I'll just put little X's, that's what I'll do. Is that going to cause weird formatting? No. Okay, cool. So call those two things done. Yeah, we'll call those two things done. Call that a good commit note and push that. Alright, that went through. I'm going to just double check that everything looks kosher on GitHub. That is a good looking repository so far. And yeah, so that will be our first hour and a half or so of development. A little slower kind of talking through it, and I'm definitely going to end up having to work with some of the code that I've ported over from another game, but that is fine. Generally, when that happens, I find more insight on how it can be applied or baked back into the engine. I find areas that it needs to change, and those become areas that can become more variable when it gets baked into the actual engine. So I'm excited to see how this project is going to improve Ladybug for me and for anyone else who may use it someday. But I think that's it for me tonight. I'm falling asleep, and I needed a lot of help there for my old project towards the end there, so I think this is a good place to call it. Thanks for anyone who watched.